What is happening, super fans? You're listening to Behind the Mask, the show where we chat with your favorite superhero fiction authors about the worlds and heroes they are writing. Behind the Mask is brought to you in conjunction with the amazing folks over at superherofiction.com, and that is superhero-fiction.com. I'm your host, Franklin Kendrick, and today on the show, we are pleased to be talking with Trish Heinrich. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
It's going to be a fun one.
I know, I'm really excited. The inaugural episode.
I know, for real. So, toughest question first off.
Yay!
So the show is called Behind the Mask, and we want to know a little bit about your secret identity when you are not behind the keyboard.
Well, I am a mom of two girls, 10 and 7, who are incredibly precocious and wild and love all things superhero and anime and all that kind of stuff. My husband is a paralegal by day and a editor by night, and he also runs role-playing game campaigns, which I'm also a part of. I'm a huge game nerd. I like tabletop games. Not so much console these days. My daughters are always playing it, and I can't really ever get in to do Mortal Kombat.
Of course.
Because there's, I just try not to play that kind of game in front of my 10-year-old. I don't know why.
The rage.
Yeah, exactly. But I do game online sometimes too. I try to garden. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
So that's me in a big nutshell.
Very cool. Hey, gotta have all your hobbies. You gotta give them a shot at least once.
I know, exactly.
So next question is, what got you into writing, and specifically, what inspired you to start writing in the superhero genre?
So I have been writing since I was probably in the 2nd or 3rd grade. I was writing Nancy Drew fanfic before I knew what fanfic was. I used to have 2 huge boxes full of spiral notebooks of Nancy Drew type stories, or like prairie romance stories, because that was a thing when I was growing up too. And I had loved making up stories. And then I took a break for a while because I got bitten by the acting bug, and I actually was a professional actress for a while before I had kids. And then I came back to writing because I needed an outlet for my creativity. And I didn't want to act anymore. I made the decision to shelve my acting career because with 2 little kids, it was like getting a babysitter, an hour's notice for an audition, and then just a bunch of other reasons. And the reason I started writing superheroes, it was kind of funny, but I wanted to do National Novel Writing Month, and I had decided this like October 3rd or 4th. So I had very little time to figure out what in the world I was going to write, but I'd had this idea in my head about a superhero story based on a woman who didn't have powers. She was like the best friend of the 2 guys that had powers, so it would be from her point of view, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a lot of fun. And it was just honestly the easiest thing I could write. I didn't have to do any world building. I could just do superpowers and, ooh, I'll set it in the past. That'll be fun. Okay, I'll just do that. And that's literally how I decided I was going to write superhero fiction. And I just thought, oh, it'll be a one-off. I'll do it for National Novel Writing Month and I'll be done. And then I realized, oh my God, I love this. This is so much fun. And I get to be a superhero geek and I get to write about things that I love. And I just really decided I liked it enough to make it the genre I want to write in for the foreseeable future. I have a lot of other genres I'd like to try, but I think I just really fell in love with it, doing it for NaNoWriMo.
That's awesome. I'll say that month is a good motivator for just like trying out something that you have always wanted to try, because it's so fast paced and it just forces you to go with it and just see what happens. And usually it comes out, like, especially in the superhero genre, it branches everywhere, because like you said, it's like it'll be one book, but when you get to the end, you're like, there is really a whole world and there's so many characters in it. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I love NaNoWriMo. I will forever have a soft spot in my heart.
Oh yeah, it's like a holiday now. It's better
It
than
is.
it's like the Christmas for like writers.
It is, exactly. Forget Thanksgiving. It's NaNoWriMo.
Yeah. If you time it just right, you get done in time for Thanksgiving. So you're like, that turkey is my reward, and then I can take a nap.
Exactly. That is exactly right.
So, turning the spotlight onto your superhero books, could you tell us a little bit about your main hero, if it is one, or if you have a team? Could you tell us a little bit about each of them and what are their dynamics like?
Absolutely. I have a universe, so I have a finished trilogy within the universe, and then I have another series. So I think I'll just another series that I'm working on. I have one book published in that. So I think what I'll probably do is just stick with the first trilogy since it's finished. So that'll probably be the easiest way. And it is a team of 3.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Alice Seymour, who's kind of the main character, really. I mean, the first book is all from her point of view. And she is a woman who doesn't have any superpowers, but she was trained by her aunt in martial arts. And then when her aunt is killed, she is given the opportunity to take up the mantle of this vigilante that has been working in Jet City, which is my fictional Seattle, Tacoma, is working in Jet City since the 1930s, and it's more like a passing of the mantle. So like the original serpent that started this whole thing, she's an old woman now, and she brings Alice in and, you know, trains her in what it means to be that vigilante. And Alice ends up bringing in her friends who have powers. So there's Marco Meyer, an Italian-American young man who has the ability to pull people's nightmares and worst fears out of them and make them appear real to them. And then there is Lionel Lawson, who's this gorgeous, tall, blonde beefcake of a man that everybody's in love with. And he is called Steel. And his skin is almost entirely invulnerable. There are some things that can pierce it, but he also heals really quickly. So he's kind of a Superman type without like the cold breath and the laser eyes and X-ray vision, that kind of thing. And they do have, you know, they have their demons. Alice comes from an abused background. Her father was abusive to her mother, and her mother died when she was young. And then her father abandoned her. So she was brought up by her aunt and uncle, and she is, the trilogy is really about her working through those, the issues of an abused child, you know, of trust and trusting yourself, and working through those anger issues and realizing that anger isn't necessarily a bad thing, but she needs to channel it, you know. And then Marco works through his guilt because he's this very sensitive artist type, but he has this horrible power, this nightmarish power. And he's like, you know, wrestles with the questions of, does that make me a monster? You know, or am I real? Am I a hero? You know, what does that mean? And then Lionel had a childhood where his mom really didn't pay any attention to him. His rich stepdad shipped him off to, you know, boarding school, and basically now pays him to stay away from the rest of the family. So Lionel doesn't really know what it's like to have a family, and he's terrified because of his strength, that he's going to hurt somebody, because that's what he did in his past. He got angry and he really hurt someone. So he distances himself, and he's, you know, he's trying to figure out, how do I love someone when I'm afraid I'm going to hurt them, and what does that mean? And so the first trilogy is all about these 3 people, like really working through these issues, and also fighting the bad guy, who just happens to be a character who wants to take over the whole city and like get rid of all the powered people and rule supreme. And so it takes the whole trilogy for them to defeat this big bad and deal with their own inner demons and figure out figure out all that stuff. So, and there's a love triangle too, which I wrote, and I was like, I hate love triangles, but I wrote one. I'm not really sure how that happened. But
I'm such a sucker for them. Like, it immediately sucks me in, where I join teams. I do all that stuff.
I do too, and then I'm like, well, okay, I guess I'm here now. You know, I'm like, I drank the Kool-Aid again, and
I think I like the thrill of being on one like they must end up with this person. But
Yeah.
then I always fall into the trap where the other one that I hate wins me over, and then I'm in the same spot as whoever is the one to decide. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I really don't know who I would choose. And
Well, and
they all have superpowers, so what?
yeah, and that's kind of how I wrote it. I was like, you're gonna like both of them, really, because they're both great guys, but they're completely different, you know, and they make this little family unit that's just, you know, it's honestly my favorite part of the trilogy is this found family that they all made with one another and how they stick by one another. And the love triangle never turns into this jealous, weird thing because I hate that. So it's more like, you know, we love you and whoever you choose, okay, you know, we'll go with it kind of a thing. So yeah. Anyway,
That's
I
awesome.
could talk all day about love triangles.
Yeah, and all the characters sound very relatable, which is
Oh,
really,
thank you.
I like that part of, I like the superheroes that are, they all have struggles, because
Mhm.
really, like, you see yourself in them, and just having the power, as a normal person, you think, oh, if I had that power, everything would like fix itself. But like in
Mhm.
these books and these stories that everyone has, the powers don't really fix everything. Like
No, they
you're still
don't.
a human being.
Yeah.
So it
In
just
fact, it
adds
makes everything
another.
harder.
Yeah, exactly. Um, what next? So you did mention a little bit about the world that your characters live in. Could you elaborate a little bit? It is a fictional place, correct?
It is. It's an alternate history. So it is set in the past. And I have actually looked at other superhero books. I'm thinking, God, I can't be the only one that has said it in the past. And I think I might be the only one that says it in the past. Um,
For now.
for now, yeah, for now. But it starts off, the first book starts off in 1947, so it's very soon after the Second World War, and it is alternate Earth. The cities are all different because I really kind of love that about DC. Like, I know Marvel, you know, it's more set, like in some ways it's more relatable because, oh, it's New York, you know, and it's that. But there's
Mhm.
just something I love about DC comics and where it's like Metropolis and Gotham, you know, that kind of thing. And so I thought, why don't I just take cities that I'm familiar with and I'll just give them a new name, which actually is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I come up with the dumbest names. Like, I'm like, this is terrible. And then I have to ask my husband for help. I'm like, help me rename this. This is what I want it to be. And he's like, okay. And like 5 minutes later, he has like the perfect name.
Some
Like a
people are just
human,
gifted with
I
it.
know he's like the human name generator or something like that. Anyway. So the first city, for the first trilogy, it is, there's 2 out of the 3 books are set in Jet City, which is very much an amalgamation of Seattle and Tacoma. And because I live in Washington State and I've lived in Seattle for a number of years, and I love Seattle. It's my favorite city. And so I just kind of squished them together and made Jet City. And then that's book 1 and book 3 in the trilogy take place in there. And the second book takes place in Metro City, which is my New York. And it takes place in a neighborhood that is a total ripoff of Hell's Kitchen. It's called the Devil's Own.
Ooh.
I know. And because I wanted this gritty noir superhero story, which if I had to do it all over again, I might have done that elsewhere because it's like the second book kind of does stick out like a sore thumb, like totally different mood than the other 2. I'm like, well, what are you gonna do? It's out there now. But so Jet City is kind of more the bright kind of, there's water and it's kind of happy, even with the vigilantes. And Metro City is definitely more the dark, very Gotham-esque, very New York City in the 70s and 80s kind of a vibe. But the main trilogy takes place, like I said, the first book starts in 1947 when they're kids, but then it very quickly, like I very quickly aged them up. And so the trilogy primarily takes place in the late 50s, early 60s. And so I do bring in some of the racial tension with the civil rights movement. I don't think I'm going to do Kennedy's assassination or the Vietnam War. I've been asked that a lot, and I'm just kind of trying to keep it simple.
Mhm.
And to me, I feel like that's a lot of complication with what I'm trying to do with the universe.
Mhm.
I might change my mind. I don't know. But I did want to kind of meet the civil rights movement head on because I have a supporting character that is a Black woman. She's the tech person. And I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about, you know, her not being able to go to college because of the color of her skin and what that meant for her, and, you know, all of that. So that's the world. Probably went off on a little bit of a tangent on you, but yeah, alternate Earth, set in the past, that kind of thing.
And what percentage of these cities gets destroyed by the end of your trilogy?
Oh, God, it's a great question. So I really have a beef when movies and stories have this huge body count of civilians. Like, to me, I'm like, that's just careless. Like, that's wasteful. So what I actually end up doing, I do have a pretty high body count for me, in my opinion, at the end of the first book. Like, I obliterate 50% of the police force. There's like a whole section of the poorer neighborhood of Jet City that like they're dead. And I don't do that willy-nilly. Like, I really try to make it a purposeful thing. Because like I said, I kind of hate it when people just like kill people off for no reason.
Who were those people? They had lives.
Exactly. They're not just extras. And so I do that. Like, I have it impact the city in that respect, like in the first book. And then in the third book, there's one building on the waterfront that's like where the end battle takes place, and I end up killing off a bunch of the rich elite. So I feel like it balances out, you know. Like, they all get trapped in this building, and like they're just being killed by these genetically enhanced guys that are now like brainless killing machines the villain created. And it's, again, I have a reason. I don't want to talk too much about it and spoil it, but
yeah, no spoilers.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't necessarily like. It's not like the first Avengers film where half of New York is destroyed by the aliens or anything, but yeah, I do have a little bit of a body counting. Oh God, now that I'm talking about it, yeah. I burned down a building in the second book. Like, I burned down an apartment building.
Well, this is just a single building, so it's not.
Yeah, just one. Just one building.
You know, they can put it back out.
Exactly.
So my next question is, what are some of your inspirations for your writing, whether it's like books, comics, or other authors in the genre or outside of the genre?
That's a really good question. Well, there are a couple books that come to mind. First of all, I didn't even know that superhero fiction was a thing until I read After the Golden Age by Carrie Vaughn and Black and White by Caitlin Kittredge and Jackie Kessler. And Black and White is actually the first book of a duology by those two women. Jackie Kessler, I think, is best known for more independent comic work than Caitlin Kittredge. But those were really the books that I read, and I thought, holy crap, you don't have to like write a comic book to write a superhero story. This is incredible. And I drew a lot of inspiration from them and how they both took tropes and kind of just angled them a little bit. Like, they kind of threw you off the scent by twisting them and making them a little different and tweaking them here and there. And I loved that. And to this day, like, I will reread those books and I will still get, you know, inspiration. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that they did that. That's amazing. And so those two in particular, those two books, I feel like are very inspirational for me. But I also draw a lot of inspiration from film. I'm a very visual thinker. And so sometimes writing for me is hard because I see it as a movie in my head and I'm wanting to get the movie on the page, and there's a lot of times I have to get out of my own way because I'll get stuck because it doesn't read exactly like what I'm picturing. And so for me, movies like that are Captain Marvel, Black Panther, Captain America, the First Avenger, which I think is just one of the most perfect superhero films of all time. Those are some of my big inspirations. Also, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I love the humor. I love the teamwork in it. Yes. And I love how it subverts gender tropes in terms of the hero and who can be a hero and how you can be heroic as a man or a woman. And so I mean, a lot of inspiration from like television shows, Veronica Mars, Warehouse 13, you know, those kinds of shows. And so I draw from that in terms of the characters and how they relate to each other. And if there's a found family aspect to a show or a book, I relate to that a lot. And I don't intentionally do it, but my books do have a lot of found family themes, and also a lot of themes about abused children, in terms of like overcoming that and growing up, you know, to be who you're supposed to be, in spite of where you've come from, you know, carrying those wounds and like moving through them. And does that answer your question? Sorry, I feel like I got like off track.
Yeah, I do also like how you weave in like relevant like themes, because really kids do read a lot of these stories, or at least, and they watch the movies and all of that. But I do think it's important to, you know, acknowledge that, hey, you know, there are a lot of broken families, there's a lot of abuse in the world, and you, really, as a kid, you're on your own in your own house, and sometimes you do feel like you're the only one that it's happening to. But then to read a story where there are characters that are superheroes, where it happens to them, it's like it gives you hope, because you can see, well, hopefully these characters learning to cope with and overcome their abuse, unless they're a villain and they just take it the total opposite. But
I do have one villain that like her trauma totally, she takes the other trail. She is my villain in the first trilogy for sure, but most of them do work to overcome. And like the series I'm writing right now, there is because it's an African-American protagonist. And so I had a sensitivity reader that was telling me, you know, it'd be great to see her family heal, because we don't see a lot of Black families that are whole in media.
Yeah.
And that was something that wasn't even on my radar. And it actually changed the direction of how I was deciding to write that story, the first book in that series. And so the second book now is, you know, working them towards that. And then the third one will be all about how they heal as a family. And what does that look like? You know, when a family is broken and there's no trust, and there has been abuse by other family members. How do you then heal the remaining members of that family? How do you come back together? And so, yeah, I try to make it where I'm realistic with the pain and the trauma of it, but I don't keep them there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a progression.
Yeah.
I mean, they are funny because they're just slogans, but I mean, saying it gets better and all of that, I mean, it can if you want it to get better and you look for like people that can support you. So I do like that. My next question is, you said your first 3 books are a trilogy. Is the series ongoing? Are you doing, you're working on one more trilogy. Is that in the same universe?
It is. I actually have 4 different series / trilogies planned for this particular universe. So they're all in the same world. And this one, it's called The Heroes of High Tide, the one I'm working on right now. And at the very least, it will be 3 books. So the third book will wrap up this main storyline, but it will leave a door open. So if I wanted to do more in that series, I definitely could. The first trilogy though is complete. Like we're done. But the series I'm working on now, I took a character from book 2 of the completed trilogy. Her name is Colleen, and she's now the protagonist of this series. And then the next series in the universe that I'm going to be working on, I take one of the main 3 from the trilogy, and it's about him and what he's doing. And I'm so excited about it. It's like Warehouse 13 meets superheroes. So he's literally a group of superheroes that go around the world looking for artifacts that do wacky stuff and are dangerous, and then lock them away for like the protection of the world.
That's awesome.
And I am like, woohoo! So I've got that, and then I've got like a superhero spy series planned, and all within that same universe. When I can clone myself and have all the time in the world to write all these books, because I'm not the quickest writer with kids and stuff, but Yeah. So I have a lot of plans for the Vigilantes universe as a whole. I'm pretty excited about it.
Very cool. So out of your books that you've written so far, do you have a favorite plot line? And if so, could you talk about it with at least minimal spoilers for those that haven't read it yet?
Oh, see, now I think this is the hardest question. Like, this is the one. A favorite.
It's like choosing your favorite child.
It is.
Or do you have, if it's not your favorite, do you have one that surprised you when it came to you?
Oh, yes. So actually the character of Colleen in the second book in the Rise of Heroes trilogy, which is the completed trilogy, I wasn't even going to have her be a point of view character. She was just going to be his girl Friday, because every noir detective needs one. But God, this character, I mean, every time I would go to write a scene with her, I'm like, no, she's taking, the lead. It was the first time I'd ever had that happen, because I always thought that was kind of bullshit. It's like, that doesn't happen. No, it totally happens. And so I was like, well, I'll make her a point of view character. And then as I was writing her as a point of view character, her story really did come to me, who she was, what her background was, what her struggles were, what was her childhood like, what is her motivation for doing this stuff, and then I was like, well, I think she needs a superpower. So she actually has my favorite superpower, which is pyrokinesis. She can create and control fire. And she's actually, in this book, she's working to control it, like making shapes and then tying it off so she doesn't have to concentrate on it. She can go shoot fireballs at other people. And I'm trying to figure out how to kind of, what else can you do with fire, and her brother has the opposite power, which is I don't know what the technical term is, but ice. He can create and control ice. So I think she was my biggest surprise, because I had no intention of creating that character. I have none of it. And then at the end of that book, I realized, there's more here. Like, there's more of a story with her that I can make. And I had started planning her series before I even finished the original trilogy, kind of just thinking, where do I want to take her? What do I want to do? So that was really exciting for me. And I'm really loving having all these different kinds of characters with all these different backgrounds, and like, she's a mob boss's granddaughter, like that's like her thing, and I was like, that is so cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the biggest surprise for me, I think.
That's awesome. It's like it really is. It becomes like, as you write it, a lot of readers are like, how do you come up with the ideas? It's like, usually it's like, it's just as entertaining for you as you're seeing it happen in your mind, and you're like, yeah. So you can laugh all you want, but it's like, you do cry for your poor creations when stuff happens to them, because you don't know till it happens.
Exactly. And oftentimes I'll get the answer to something while I'm making dinner. And like, my husband, God bless him, he knows if I come running out of the kitchen, it's not a culinary emergency. I'm running to my office to make a note because the light bulb has gone off,
Yeah.
So it's just funny. Like, it's always dinner time when I'm cooking. I'm like, oh, that's it.
Yeah. You just have to have like a little notebook handy somewhere to put it down.
It's true. It's true.
Next question is, for your future books that are going to be coming out sometime when they are finished, for your readers that have read so far, do you have any hints, or can you tease anything for followers of your characters?
Yes. So Colleen, if you've read the first book, she had her heart broken, but it's not going to stay broken. So don't worry. And I actually very much love her new love interest. It's a Black female cop in the 60s. So that's been really challenging and really cool to create that character. The other tease I can give you is, for those of you who were really loved Lionel in the original trilogy and were so happy with a part of his ending, but wanted more. I was going to say the spoiler, and I had to stop myself. If you're wanting more, it's going to be really a lot of fun. Lionel is going to learn to live with the changes that happen at the end of the trilogy, and Lionel will also find love again. It's going to take a little while, but he's going to find love again. So.
Yeah. So if you are waiting with bated breath, you can feast on those hints and you can make your theories.
Please do.
Yeah, you just have to wait until it is on your Kindle or in your paper form. So that was actually my last question. So I guess, is there anything else that you would like to say to the listeners that you want them to know before I wrap it all up?
Well, yes. The finished trilogy, as well as a box set of the trilogy with a never before published prequel novella, is available on Kindle Unlimited. And that is the Rise of Heroes trilogy. You can find it on superherofiction.com. The first book in the Heroes of High Tide is also in Kindle Unlimited. And the second book is up for pre-order if you're just feeling the itch and you just want to make sure you get it like the second it goes live. And then, I plan on having the first 3 books of Heroes of High Tide complete, hopefully by January of 2021. So you won't have to wait too terribly long for Colleen's story to at least get to a place where you're not like, phew, what's going to happen?
Yes. I'm looking at my notes here.
It's okay.
So I do want to point out for anybody listening, before I do the whole end spiel, if you are a reader of superhero fiction and you are looking for an easy place to find them all listed and not buried in a barrage of other genres, I would say please go check out superherofiction.com. It has been meticulously curated. It is authentic superhero stories. They are all flavors, though. So
yes.
If you are searching for something, I would say please go check it out. It's a very good resource, and it's an easy way to find something new without going crazy with the suggestions from the various online retailers.
Yes, exactly.
So I just want to thank Trish for being the very first interview. I know it was pressure.
It's okay. It was fun. This is great.
It was very fun. So for everyone listening, if you like the content in this podcast, whether you watched it on YouTube or listened to it on your favorite podcasting site, please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on any of our future awesome content. I would say smash the like button, ring the bell for notifications. Let us know in the comments down below if you're on YouTube what you thought. If you discuss the books that were discussed, please try to keep it spoiler-free or at least put a spoiler tag so that people that want to check them out are not angry at you or us. And as always, because really it's a real thing. You don't want to be spoiled.
It totally is.
So, but as always, guys, I just want to thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you all. We all appreciate you all. Without you guys, there really is no show for our books or for our podcast. So I appreciate everyone, whether you're new or old, to the Superhero Fiction channel, and I will see you all next time.